with a horsehair crest running down the center. Spartan officers like Leonidas would have worn a helmet with the crest running side to side. Some historians believe that the Spartans most likely wore a bronze cuirass for torso protection. Most hoplites at the time, however, wore sophisticated lamellar armor. Its strength comes from its layered design, made by gluing strips of heavy linen, leather, and thin bronze together. The lamellar armor forms a type of ancient Kevlar.
Believe it or not, multiple strips of leather and linen could withstand a spear thrust. It wouldn't penetrate a spear or arrow thrust.
Abandoning the missile attack, 10,000 Persian light infantrymen charge at the Greeks. Over 1 million pounds of muscle, bronze, and wood are about to collide in the Thermopylae Pass.
Inevitably, this mass crashes into the Greek phalanx, and it just doesn't move. I mean, it's just too heavy, it's too thick. The pressure from the back is holding it forward.
The Greeks stop the crushing charge. Now they go on the offensive. Fighting in their disciplined phalanx, the front two lines launch a coordinated spear attack from above and below the shield wall. The hoplite's primary weapon is the dory, a 6 to 9 foot long spear. About 2 inches in diameter, the 2 to 4 pound dory features a deadly iron spearhead. On the back of the spear is an iron butt plate, which provides balance and gives the hoplite a second weapon with which to kill.
The first clash, spears come down and the spears come up from underneath, and the cries and the blood is everywhere. It probably killed 1,000 men, and most of the wounds would have been fatal. They would have been delivered to the chest or the face.
The hoplite's secondary weapon is the xiphos, a 2 to 3 foot long double-edged iron straight sword, made specifically to thrust and hack at the enemy. But the Greeks would only use this if they lost their spear or if the phalanx broke rank, which did not happen often. The fighting rages on and off for most of the day.
What mostly happens is what we call battle pulses. The two sides would hack at one another and bang at one another for a few, maybe sometimes only a few seconds, 10, 20 seconds, then they'd break off again. Okay? Maybe the other side would drop back a little bit and each guy would move forward again. So it was not a continuous battlefield experience. It was not a continuous combat. It can't work that way.
The Persians are easy targets. They wear little or no armor and carry flimsy wooden shields.
The Persian light infantry are not designed for this kind of battle. They're built for speed, to attack disorganized tribal armies on the open plains of Asia.
Stuck in the narrow pass, the Persians are unable to maneuver. They also cannot utilize their cavalry. The steepness of Mount Koleodromos on one side and the Aegean Sea on the other prevent a Persian cavalry flanking maneuver.
If you look at the two Greek battles that we study most often, which is Marathon and Thermopylae, what you'll see is the brilliance of Greek commanders in selecting terrain where the Persians could not bring their cavalry to bear. At Marathon, they never got it off the ships, and even if they did, it wouldn't make any difference because the Greeks had wedged themselves into a narrow front. And same at Thermopylae. Cavalry would have been totally useless.
With each battle pulse, more and more Persians are slaughtered. There is no mercy, only death.
And it was just carnage the first day. The Spartans formed up shoulder to shoulder like a great rock and let the waves of the Persians just break on them.
The Persians began to get the message that maybe it wasn't such a great idea to launch themselves in wave after wave against these guys, each one of whom had the equivalent of our very best special forces training.
At the end of the day, the 300 Spartans and their Greek allies kill any remaining Persians.
Leonidas understands the tactical situation, and after the first day of fighting, he understands I've won exactly what I set out to do. I'm holding up one of the largest land armies ever to attack Greece. I've got it funneled up here, and so far, they can't do anything to stop it.
But at the same time the land battle is being fought, the Persians are trying to gain access to the rear of the Greek defenses. By sea, a great naval battle between the Greeks and Persians is bloodying the Artemisium Strait. In the Thermopylae Pass, the mighty King Leonidas and his Spartan warriors are successfully fending off an attack by the Persian light infantry. At the same time, off the coast of Thermopylae in the Artemisium Strait, a battle between the Persian and Greek navies is about to erupt.
If you think of the Battle of Thermopylae in strategic terms, if you have a military mind, the first question you're going to ask is, yeah, the Spartans could hold this line here, but what about the sea? What about the ocean? Why couldn't Xerxes just land troops behind them by his ships? He had an armada of 1,000 warships.
The reason is the Athenian navy. They are based here at Artemisium, while the Persians are based across the strait at Aphatai. The Persian goal is to break through the Greek line, sail down the narrow 6-mile-wide Artemisium Strait, and land troops behind Leonidas and his Greek warriors, surrounding them. The man in charge of stopping the Persian fleet is aboard the Athenian flagship. He is considered by many to be the mastermind behind the land and sea defense against the Persians, and is widely regarded as one of the ancient world's most brilliant military tacticians. He is the Athenian Themistocles.
When most people think of the Battle of Thermopylae, they immediately think of the 300 Spartans, or they think of Leonidas. But really, the unsung hero of the battle, the man who made it all happen, was Themistocles.
Themistocles, in a way, was the Winston Churchill of his day. He was a great Athenian politician with great foresight for the coming struggle and a profound military thinker. If it weren't for him, there would have been no Battle of Thermopylae.
The Persian navy attempts to surround the Greek fleet. They send 200 of their 1,000 ships southeast around the island of Euboea.
By sailing around Euboea, the Persian naval commander is going to try to avoid wasting his energies with a direct assault. He figures the Greeks are not stupid enough to attack him, so he'll wait at his base until the smaller force sails around the island and surrounds the Greek fleet.
But Themistocles makes a bold and daring move that surprises the Persian commander. Late in the afternoon, the Greek fleet sails from their base and provokes the Persian fleet, which is nearly 6 times its size.
This surprises the Persian commander greatly. That Themistocles would have the gall to attack the mighty Persian navy is one thing. But he's also surprised by the timing of the attack. It's late in the afternoon.
By starting in the afternoon, he knows the battle will be over soon because they're going to run out of daylight. You can't fight a naval battle in the dark. So Themistocles is trying to minimize his potential damages if the battle gets away from him by counting on nightfall to end it.
The Persian commander orders his 800 remaining ships into the strait. Despite being severely outnumbered, Themistocles and the fleet attempt to sink the Persian ships in a ferocious attack.
The name of the game was to sink the other guy's ship, to ram her in the side, or to knock all of the oars off and render her out of commission. The Greeks definitely have an uphill battle here. But they do have one major advantage. They have the strategic brilliance of Themistocles.
Themistocles is born the son of a merchant. If this had been earlier in Greek history, Themistocles would have been relegated to a lower status. But democracy is about to be born in Athens, allowing Themistocles to shed his merchant-class shackles. Because of its natural harbor, Athens develops a strong seafaring tradition and becomes both an economic and naval force in the Aegean. Many Athenian males, including Themistocles, become expert seamen, able to navigate the treacherous Greek coasts. While Themistocles' naval training would no doubt shape his future, it is on land in the Athenian government where he might have learned some of his most valuable lessons.
What Themistocles learned growing up in a developing democracy was the art of manipulation and political strategies. These were not cutthroat politics like, say, in Rome, where people were literally killed. What Themistocles did was use his intelligence and guile to position himself in the government where one day he could be extremely influential.
It is these skills that will ultimately help him create the Athenian navy, which he will need to battle the mighty Persians. Around 490 BC, 10 years before the last stand at Thermopylae, Athens owns only about 100 warships. Themistocles knows this is only a fraction of what the Persians can muster. He knows this because he witnessed the Persian force up close and personally at Marathon.
Themistocles was one of the generals who had been at the Battle of Marathon, and there he had seen Persian tactics firsthand. So he was an experienced military man. He took away a different lesson from Marathon than the other Greek generals did. The other Greek generals saw it as a triumph of ground forces over navy. What Themistocles learned at Marathon was that you cannot use ground forces on the ground unless you have naval support.
Themistocles knows that after their humiliating loss at Marathon, the Persians would seek revenge and be back to finish what they had started. And he knows they won't make the same mistake twice. He believes the Persians will come by land and sea and bring many more soldiers and ships.
What Themistocles saw was a synergy between naval forces and ground forces. That is, the Navy could only support ground forces as long as the coast was friendly. The ground forces had to make the coast friendly.
Themistocles knew the Persians could not sustain an army in mainland Greece if they weren't able to supply it by sea. So if you had naval power, a significant naval power, and made yourself the dominant naval power in the Aegean, you could render the Persians impotent.
Thus, he concluded, the future for Athens rested not in increasing the size of her ground force, which was fairly significant anyway, but in point of fact, to increase her navy.
The problem Themistocles faces is that no one believes him. Both the Athenian generals and the general public are plagued by an overconfidence in the Athenian army and a denial about Persia's return.
Themistocles lived every day of his political life as if, we've got to deal with this now, we've got to deal with this now. And there were a couple strategies that Themistocles follows that probably saved the Greek world.
First, he must convince Athens that they need to invest in the navy. Perhaps more importantly, he must find the money with which to do it. He gets lucky in 483 BC, 3 years before the last stand at Thermopylae. In the Athenian district of Laurinium, miners discover a new vein of silver. After a year, they extract nearly 2.5 tons of the precious metal from the earth. Themistocles wants the money made from silver to be spent on his navy. The challenge for him is to convince Athenians that they don't need extra money in their pockets, but rather extra warships in their harbor.
Each Athenian was due to get 10 drachma. That would be about $1,500, $1,600 in today's money. It's a lot of money.
Because most Athenians are in denial about a second Persian invasion, Themistocles draws upon his political savvy to win them over. He lies to them. Themistocles misleads the Athenians into thinking that a small rival island off the coast of Athens called Aegina poses a threat to the safety of Athenian merchant ships. Finally convinced, Athenians allow Themistocles to invest in the navy. Greek civilization might be saved by a lie.
What historians might call a lie or an untruth, a politician would call a clever misdirection of the populace to achieve a greater end. And that's what Themistocles did. He knew if he told the truth that the populace would never go for it. So he had a nice little ploy, a little story, a little cover story, and it worked.
Themistocles gets his ships. Athenian warships at the time are called triremes. The trireme is about 90 feet long by about 18 feet wide. Most of it is likely built of pine, a common Mediterranean tree.
The best analogy of a trireme was she was a light boat that was more like a racing scull. It was not a heavy boat. And why? Because the object was to ram, and so the lighter it was, the faster you could make it go.
Built for speed, the hull of the trireme is open. The deck consists of 1 or 2 planks of wood running lengthwise, upon which the ship's commander and about 4 Marines would stand. Despite possessing a small sail, the trireme is mainly powered by between 170 and 220 oarsmen, arranged in 3 banks of oars, one above the other. The front of the trireme is shaped like a rounded prow. The prow is probably made of heavier cedar, then covered with brass or copper, enabling the ship to ram enemy vessels.
The fastest a trireme has ever been marked, and we've reconstructed them, in a 2,000-meter run is 15 knots. But on balance, that's a fast pulse in order to ram.
By the time the Persians reached Thermopylae and Artemisium a year later, the Greeks have added over 100 additional ships to the fleet. Still, the Persian fleet outnumbers the Greek fleet nearly 6 to 1. Themistocles is about to discover whether his efforts to build the Athenian navy have been in vain. In the Artemisium Strait, the Athenian commander Themistocles leads nearly 200 Greek warships into battle. They attack more than 800 Persian warships.
Themistocles is doing the unexpected. Late in the afternoon on the first day of the battle, he's actually attacking the much larger Persian fleet. It's a risky move. If he allows the Persians to sail through the Artemisium Strait, Leonidas and the 300 Spartans will be surrounded and cut to pieces.
Using a flag to signal the fleet, Themistocles has all of the Greek warships slowly back into a narrower part of the strait, forming a circle. At a second signal, the Greek fleet rushes from their formation and attacks the Persians.
Greek naval battles were actually not about people getting off and fighting each other or even hooking up and trying to fight. They were about maneuvering the ships in such a way that you can ram and sink.
The most common way was to come alongside at an angle and smash his oars, because remember, they're not powered by sail, they're powered by oars. So if you could smash his oars, and what would happen as one ship came alongside the other, the attacking ship would pull in its oars and allow the side of its ship to smash in and run along this way. Now she's dead in the water.
So in these battles, what is really consequential isn't so much the weight of your ship or the size of your ship, but rather the speed of your ship.
In the confined space at Artemisium, the smaller Greek fleet inflicts damage upon several Persian ships. They also capture 30 enemy vessels and take many prisoners.
We're not exactly sure why the Greeks fared so well that first day at Artemisium. The Greeks and the Persians all had the same types of boats. Everybody had triremes, so nobody would have necessarily had any speed advantage.
Whatever the reason, it is a great psychological victory for the Greek navy. And because Themistocles began his attack late in the day, he knew the battle would not last long, ensuring his potential losses would be minimal.
This has got to be a complete surprise to everybody. The Persians certainly weren't expecting to lose to the smaller Greek fleet, and I don't think the Greeks were expecting to come out so strong. And I think that's one of the reasons why Themistocles started this thing so late in the day. So you've got Themistocles winning the battle at sea, and of course Leonidas and the Spartans are winning the battle on land.
On this first day of battle, Xerxes has been shocked and embarrassed by Themistocles and the Athenian navy, and has lost nearly 10,000 infantrymen to Leonidas and the Spartans.
After the first day's battle at Thermopylae and Artemisium, the Persians have been very roughly handled by the Greeks. They are back in their camp that evening, licking their wounds, and Xerxes is wondering what he is going to do about this.
As night falls, a tremendous storm erupts, and the Persian soldiers are further harassed by thunder, wind, and rain.
So you have to imagine the flashes of lightning illuminating the wrecks on the sea and the dead bodies. So very disconsoling night maybe for the Persians. They probably weren't getting as good a sleep as they had wanted. They were going to need it for the next day's battle.
The Persian fleet that has been sent around the island of Euboea is caught in the storm. The Aegean swallows all 200 ships. It is an omen that the Persians cannot ignore, and one the Greeks happily embrace. For the next day will bring more bloodshed. On the second day of battle, the Athenians and Spartans take their respective defensive positions. Themistocles in the Artemisium Strait, Leonidas and his 300 Spartans in the Thermopylae Pass. They both prepare for the second Persian attack.
The sun comes up on the second day, and Xerxes says, well, enough with the junior level infantry. We're sending in the big boys.
Xerxes sends in the hammer and fist of the Persian army, the silent and masked heavy infantry called the Immortals.
Xerxes decided to send in the A-team, the Immortals. He believed that once the Immortals were put into action, that would end the resistance immediately.
Here come 10,000 men assembled in a rectangle, in essence. Boom, 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 right to you in silence. No matter what happens, they come right at you. They wore no helmets, but they had what's called a tiara on their head. The tiara was a wrapped cloth, but very thin cloth that they could see through.
10,000 strong. They were called Immortals because when one man retired or died, he was immediately replaced by another.
The armies stand some 50 yards apart in the Thermopylae Pass. The Persians, faceless and mute. But silence is not part of the Spartan psychological strategy.